Your thermostat probably says something like 68 degrees, maybe 70. Maybe you barely notice it anymore. You tap a button, the house feels comfortable, and life goes on. But here's something most people never stop to think about. For nearly all of human history, there was no thermostat, no furnace, no insulated walls, no heated blankets. Winter wasn't just uncomfortable, it was one of the deadliest forces our species ever faced. Thousands of generations woke each morning wondering a simple question: will we still be alive tomorrow? And yet somehow, they didn't merely survive. They raised families, built communities, created art, and spread across some of the coldest places on Earth, long before modern technology existed. So how did ordinary humans accomplish something that would challenge even many modern people? The answer isn't brute strength. It isn't luck, and it definitely isn't the story most of us learned in school. Because Ice Age humans weren't primitive cave dwellers barely hanging on. They were some of the greatest engineers our species has ever produced. Imagine standing outside on an open plain during the last Ice Age. The wind never seems to stop. Snow blows sideways. Every breath burns your lungs. Your fingers begin losing feeling within minutes. The temperature isn't simply below freezing. It's cold enough that a single mistake could become fatal before the next sunrise. Today, if your car breaks down during a winter storm, you call for help. Back then, there was nobody coming. Everything depended on preparation. That's why survival started long before winter arrived. Instead of reacting to the cold, ancient communities spent months planning for it. Summer wasn't just a pleasant season, it was construction season. Every warm day represented precious time to gather materials, repair shelters, preserve food, and prepare clothing before nature closed its doors. To them, winter wasn't an emergency. It was an exam they studied for all year. Most movies still show prehistoric people living inside caves. It's an image we've all seen countless times. A tiny fire, dark walls, people wrapped in animal skins, waiting for spring. But archaeology paints a very different picture. While caves were sometimes used, many communities deliberately built their own shelters exactly where they needed them. Instead of searching endlessly for perfect caves, they created homes that worked better than many natural shelters. One surprisingly clever idea involves something almost nobody would expect: the ground itself. Several feet below the surface, temperatures stay much more stable than the freezing air above. Ancient builders understood this through observation. By digging partially underground, they reduced exposure to icy winds while taking advantage of the Earth's natural insulation. It wasn't magic, it was physics. Long before anyone understood thermal science, they were already applying its principles. But digging into the Earth was only the beginning. The real brilliance appeared in the walls. Imagine building a winter jacket. You wouldn't wear only one thick layer. You'd combine several materials that each perform a different job. Ancient shelters followed exactly the same philosophy. Soft animal hides lined the inside, trapping warm air around the people sleeping within. Plant fibers and dried grasses helped reduce moisture. Outer coverings blocked powerful winds while allowing damp air to escape before it froze. Each layer solved a different problem. Together, they created a remarkably efficient barrier against one of nature's harshest environments. Modern homes use insulation, vapor barriers, and weather-resistant materials. The tools have changed. The science hasn't. Perhaps the most astonishing discovery comes from the frozen plains of Eastern Europe. Archaeologists uncovered circular structures unlike anything they expected. Not caves, not tents, actual buildings. Their frames were constructed using the enormous bones of woolly mammoths. At first glance, it sounds unbelievable. Why would anyone build a house out of bones? Because mammoths provided nearly everything a community needed. Their bones were incredibly strong. Their tusks naturally curved into arches. Their hides became thick protective coverings. Nothing was wasted. Massive skulls anchored the foundation. Long leg bones reinforced the walls. Curved tusks formed dome-shaped supports. Once covered with carefully stitched hides, these homes became surprisingly effective at holding heat inside while keeping brutal winds outside. To modern eyes, they may appear unusual, To Ice Age families, they were engineering masterpieces. Building one wasn't a weekend project. Entire groups worked together. Every person had a role. Some gathered materials. Others shaped hides. Experienced builders assembled structural supports. Children learned by watching adults solve practical problems every single day. Construction required planning, communication, and cooperation. Those aren't the habits of a struggling species. They're the habits of successful societies. In many ways, winter forced humans to become better collaborators. No individual could build everything alone. Communities survived because knowledge was shared across generations. Grandparents taught parents. Parents taught children. Every lesson increased the odds that the next winter would be survived as well. Knowledge itself became one of humanity's greatest survival tools. Of course, even the best shelter meant nothing without heat. Fire changed everything. But ancient fires were far more sophisticated than many people imagine. Instead of simply piling wood into a flame, experienced families carefully managed fuel. Different materials burned differently. Some created steady heat. Others produced quick bursts of warmth. Some generated longer-lasting embers useful through the night. In regions where trees were scarce, people became incredibly resourceful. Dried grasses, shrubs, animal remains, and other available materials were prepared and used efficiently. Nothing valuable was wasted. Fuel wasn't collected randomly. It was carefully managed like an essential resource. Running out during the middle of winter wasn't an inconvenience. It could become a disaster. So every piece mattered. The placement of the fire mattered just as much. Instead of heating an entire shelter equally, many homes naturally developed warmer and cooler zones. Areas closest to the fire stayed comfortable for infants, older adults, and anyone recovering from illness. Other sections became workspaces for repairing tools, preparing food, or crafting clothing. Heat became something to organize, not simply enjoy. Even smoke served an important purpose. Besides carrying heat upward, it helped preserve meat hanging overhead while discouraging insects whenever temperatures allowed. Every element inside the shelter served multiple functions. Space was limited. Efficiency wasn't optional. It was survival. One challenge remained surprisingly difficult: moisture. Every breath released water vapor. Cooking produced steam. Wet clothing slowly dried indoors. Without proper airflow, that moisture could collect inside the shelter. When temperatures dropped overnight, frost formed. Over time, ice damaged coverings, weakened structures, and made living conditions increasingly dangerous. Ancient builders discovered something remarkable. Warm air naturally rises. Cool air enters from below. By allowing fresh air to enter through lower openings while giving warmer, damp air a path to escape near the roof, they created a natural ventilation system. No electricity, no fans, just careful observation of how air behaves. Sometimes the smartest inventions aren't machines. They're simple ideas used brilliantly. Winter survival wasn't only about architecture. It depended equally on clothing. Animal hides weren't chosen randomly. Different furs offered different advantages. Some trapped warm air exceptionally well. Others resisted moisture. Some remained flexible during freezing temperatures. Instead of wearing one enormous hide, people layered multiple garments together. Air trapped between layers created additional insulation. Modern winter coats still rely on exactly the same principle. Materials have improved. Physics has not. Thousands of years separate your jacket from theirs. The basic idea remains astonishingly familiar. And perhaps that's the most surprising lesson of all. The farther we look into humanity's past, the more we discover minds solving problems with logic, experimentation, and creativity, not unlike engineers today. But surviving winter wasn't only about staying warm, it was about staying human. Once darkness settled across the frozen landscape, something remarkable happened inside those shelters. The work slowed. The fire crackled. Families gathered together. For thousands of generations, nighttime became humanity's first classroom. Modern life has convinced us that sleep should happen in one long, uninterrupted stretch. But history suggests something very different. Before electric lights, many people naturally slept in two separate phases. They would sleep for several hours after sunset, wake quietly during the middle of the night, then return to sleep until dawn. Those peaceful waking hours weren't wasted. People repaired clothing, checked the fire, fed infants, shared stories, talked about the day's hunt, remembered ancestors, planned for tomorrow. Night wasn't empty time. It was social time. The fire became much more than a source of heat. It became the center of human culture. Think about it. Every bedtime story you've ever heard, every family legend, every myth passed from one generation to the next, all of them trace their roots back to evenings spent around fires much like these. Long before books existed, knowledge survived because people spoke. Children learned which animals were dangerous, which plants were useful, which rivers flooded, which stars marked changing seasons. Stories weren't entertainment alone. They were survival manuals disguised as memories. Winter also gave people something unusual: time. During warmer months, nearly every hour was spent hunting, gathering, building, or traveling. Winter changed that rhythm. Long nights encouraged creativity. Many archaeologists believe some of humanity's earliest artistic achievements flourished during these colder months. Small carvings, decorated tools, personal ornaments, symbols scratched into bone, objects that carried meaning beyond simple survival. Art wasn't created because life became easy. It appeared because humans refused to let hardship define them. Even in the harshest environments imaginable, people still created beauty. That tells us something profound about who we are. Creativity isn't a luxury. It's part of being human. Preparation for winter actually began long before the first snowfall. Experienced communities watched nature carefully. The length of daylight, animal migrations, changing plants, cooling winds. These became a calendar written across the landscape. Construction started while weather remained favorable. Food preservation accelerated. Hunting focused on building reserves rather than immediate meals. Nothing happened by accident. The most successful groups weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the best planners. Every decision made during summer echoed through winter. A forgotten repair, an unfinished shelter, a poorly stored food supply. Any one mistake could become life-threatening months later. Planning wasn't simply practical. It became a way of life. Food storage demanded just as much ingenuity as shelter construction. Frozen ground became nature's refrigerator. Underground storage pits protected valuable meat from scavengers while keeping temperatures consistently cold. Some foods were dried. Others smoked over slow-burning fires. Fat-rich foods became especially valuable because they provided enormous amounts of energy during freezing weather. Nothing edible went to waste. Bones supplied useful materials. Animal skins became clothing. Sinew transformed into strong thread. Even small scraps found new purposes. Modern society often throws things away after one use. Ice Age communities couldn't afford that mindset. Every resource carried value. Every object deserved another purpose. Efficiency wasn't environmental activism. It was survival. Of course, no shelter lasted forever. Heavy snow, strong winds, constant freezing and thawing. Everything slowly damaged even the best-built homes. So maintenance never stopped. Families inspected coverings, repaired weak sections, added fresh insulation, replaced worn materials before small problems became dangerous ones. Their homes weren't finished projects. They were living systems requiring constant attention. In some ways, that sounds surprisingly familiar. Modern homeowners repair roofs, seal windows, replace insulation, check heating systems before winter. The technology changed. The responsibility stayed remarkably similar. Perhaps the greatest misconception about ancient humans is that they simply reacted to nature. The evidence suggests exactly the opposite. They observed, experimented, improved, passed successful ideas to the next generation. Over thousands of years, small discoveries accumulated. Better shelter designs, warmer clothing, safer food storage, more efficient fires. Knowledge slowly became civilization. The inventions that protected one family eventually protected entire communities. It's how progress truly happens. Not through one brilliant breakthrough, but through countless small improvements shared across generations. Eventually, the Ice Age ended. Temperatures slowly rose. Forests expanded across landscapes once covered by frozen grasslands. Life changed. Massive mammoths disappeared. Communities adapted once again. Many winter technologies gradually faded because they were no longer necessary. But they weren't forgotten because they failed. They disappeared because the environment no longer demanded them. Thousands of years later, scientists and engineers began studying ancient shelters with fresh eyes. What they discovered surprised everyone. Many design principles used by prehistoric builders matched ideas found in modern cold-weather engineering. Layered insulation, airflow management, thermal zoning, energy efficiency, different materials, the same physical laws. Our ancestors never studied engineering textbooks. They studied nature itself. And nature was the greatest teacher they could ever have had. Now think about your own home. You probably adjust your thermostat without giving it much thought. Warm air flows through hidden vents. Insulation fills your walls. Double-pane windows reduce heat loss. Your roof protects against snow. Your jacket traps warm air around your body. Every one of those ideas reflects principles humans have understood for thousands of years. Modern technology made warmth easier. It didn't invent the science behind it. That science was discovered one freezing winter after another by people determined to keep their families alive. The next time cold weather arrives, pause for just a moment before turning up the heat. Remember the generations who faced winter, armed with nothing more than careful planning, shared knowledge, skilled craftsmanship, and incredible determination. Remember the builders who transformed bones into homes, the families who turned firelight into classrooms, the storytellers whose voices still echo every time we gather around loved ones after dark. Your comfortable house isn't the beginning of humanity's story. It's the latest chapter. Every warm room, every insulated wall, every cozy winter night exists because countless generations solved impossible problems long before electricity, central heating, or modern science ever appeared. They didn't conquer winter by overpowering nature. They conquered it by understanding it. And in doing so, they proved something extraordinary. Humanity's greatest survival tool has never been sharper weapons or stronger muscles. It has always been the ability to learn, adapt, cooperate, and pass knowledge forward. That's the real inheritance your ancestors left behind. Not mammoth bones, not stone tools, but millions of tiny discoveries built upon one another until they became the modern world surrounding you today. So tonight, when your home feels perfectly warm and safe, remember this. Comfort isn't something humans accidentally found. It's something countless generations carefully built, one winter at a time.